"You're useless. Get out of my house." The words slammed into Grace like a physical blow. Her heart raced as the grand chandelier above flickered, almost mocking her disbelief. She had served the prestigious Harrington family for years, cleaning their mansion, caring for their children, cooking their meals. But today, everything had changed. Alexander Harrington, the CEO, the man who'd always treated her as invisible, had humiliated her beyond measure. For a brief moment, time stood still. The cold marble floor beneath her felt like it was closing in. But in the chaos of her emotions, something else began to stir. Something stronger than the humiliation. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like and hit the subscribe button. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let's continue. For 20 years, Grace Thompson had worked for the Harringtons, a family that prided itself on wealth, status, and power. Grace had never been one to complain. She did her job well, perhaps even too well, never asking for much. She had been the one to take care of their children when they were babies, a job that had earned her their trust, at least in their eyes. To them, she was invisible, only an employee in a uniform, always present, but rarely acknowledged beyond what was required. But Grace knew the truth about the Harringtons. Behind their glitzy exteriors and luxurious home was a family that cared little about those who served them. She had witnessed countless moments of their cruelty, disrespectful comments, offhand remarks about her race, and the constant, almost subconscious way they treated her like she was inferior. She never let it show, but it hurt. Deep down, she knew she was worth more than the life they relegated her to. She had put up with it all. The gruff words of the patriarch, Alexander, the sneering glances of his wife, Victoria, and even the casual dismissals from their spoiled children. But today, everything changed. Today, Grace stood in front of the man who had always made her feel small, Alexander Harrington, who, in a sudden fit of arrogance, had decided that her services were no longer needed. "You're useless! Get out of my house!" he had screamed, his voice dripping with disgust as he flung the dismissal at her. The humiliation washed over her like a wave, but beneath the surface, something stirred. Anger, and a deep resolve. Grace left the mansion that day with nothing but the clothes on her back, the memories of 2 decades of labor, and the burning realization that she had nothing left to lose. As she walked down the long, winding driveway, she felt the sting of the rejection, but also something else. A fire, a sense of empowerment she hadn't felt in years. She had a purpose now. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming everything she had given up for so long. The crisp evening air bit at her skin. But Grace didn't notice. The rawness of her emotions coursed through her veins, and with every step away from the mansion, she felt herself growing stronger. She wasn't just walking away from the life the Harringtons had forced on her. She was walking toward something new, a future where she wasn't invisible. She spent the next few days sorting through her life, wrestling with the reality of her situation. She didn't have much, a few savings, a small apartment she had been paying for on the side. But she had skills. Grace wasn't just a maid. She was a brilliant organizer, an expert in running households, and a woman who had learned how to navigate the labyrinthine world of high society. She knew their secrets, their weaknesses, And as she sat in her small, bare apartment, the weight of her years of silent observation began to make sense. She was not powerless. She had something they didn't: knowledge. Grace understood the complexities of Alexander Harrington's empire. She knew the financial struggles the family faced, the cracks in the company that were carefully hidden beneath layers of deception. She knew how to expose them, and she was going to make him pay. It wasn't long before Grace began to put her plan into motion. She reached out to an old contact, someone who had once worked as an accountant for the Harrington family's company. He was just as disillusioned with them as she had been, but unlike Grace, he had left years ago. Over dinner, at a rundown cafe, he handed her a set of confidential documents, financial records, business transactions, contracts that would expose Alexander Harrington's dark secrets. Grace spent the next few weeks studying those records, piecing together the puzzle of the Harrington family's hidden financial troubles. She discovered overinflated expenses, questionable investments, and a series of illegal transactions that had been swept under the rug for years. But it wasn't just the financials. There were personal secrets too. Alexander's affairs, his under-the-table deals, and most damning of all, the exploitation of their workers. She had the ammunition now, and it was time to strike. Grace knew that to truly make Alexander Harrington pay, she couldn't just expose his secrets to the public. She had to hit him where it hurt the most: his empire. She contacted a prominent business reporter, someone who had a history of digging into the unethical practices of powerful CEOs. She handed over the evidence, including all the documents, and waited. Within days, a report surfaced on a popular business news outlet. The headline read, "CEO Alexander Harrington, under investigation for fraud, exploitation, and corruption." The news hit the Harrington family like a bombshell. Alexander was forced to step down from his position as CEO as investigations began to unravel the carefully constructed facade of his business. His wealth began to dwindle as lawsuits piled up, and the public turned on him. Grace watched it all unfold, satisfaction blooming in her chest with every new scandal that emerged. But the best part was yet to come. In the midst of the chaos, Grace sent a final, anonymous letter to the Harrington family. In it, she revealed her identity, explaining how she had carefully orchestrated every detail of their downfall. She reminded Alexander of the day he had thrown her out, the day he had dismissed her as worthless, and how she had taken everything he had for granted and turned it into his greatest defeat. When the letter reached him, Alexander realized too late the gravity of his actions. His arrogance had blinded him to the fact that the people he had mistreated held the power to dismantle everything he had built. He had underestimated her. Grace didn't just take revenge. She reclaimed her dignity, and in doing so, she tore down the empire of a man who had underestimated her. As the dust settled, Grace found herself at the helm of her own life. The wounds of betrayal still stung, but they had made her stronger. She had become a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had risen from the ashes of humiliation to build something far greater. She opened her own consulting business, helping others like her, those who had been exploited, dismissed, and silenced. She became a voice for those who had been overlooked for far too long. As her business grew, so did her influence. She now had the resources to ensure that the wrongs she had endured wouldn't be forgotten. She used her newfound power to help others rise above the systems that tried to keep them down. Grace found strength in her own resilience, proving that no matter how small or invisible someone may seem, they have the power to rise above. Her story wasn't just about revenge. It was about transforming adversity into strength and showing the world that no one is ever truly powerless. Grace's story is a reminder that the world often overlooks those who serve in silence, but that silence can be powerful. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is not in retaliation, but in rising above, transforming adversity into strength, and showing the world that no one is ever truly powerless.